Hey everyone, I'm BombYG from KTG. Today's topic is all about missile evasion in Metalstorm. Missiles are one of the most important tools in combat alongside guns and rockets. But knowing how to evade them effectively is just as crucial. The basic approach is to use flares to decoy the missile. Then quickly use terrain to hide. Most of you probably already have that instinct down. But today, instead of covering the basics, we're going to go deep on the concept and technique of evading missiles consecutively. All right, let's get into it. Before we talk about consecutive missile evasion, it's really important to first understand the cooldowns on flares and missiles. The standard flare has a 5-second cooldown. Once you use a flare, you have to wait 5 seconds before you can use another one. Now, active laser missiles have a cooldown of 1.8 seconds, IR missiles 1.3 seconds, passive laser missiles 0.8 seconds, and jets like the MiG-21 or Su-25 have IR missiles with a fast cooldown of just 0.8 seconds. So with a standard flare on a 5-second cooldown, you can dodge the first missile, but any missiles that follow in quick succession, those you simply can't evade with a normal flare. That's why, to evade consecutive missiles, you need to equip the Fast Flares upgrade token. With Fast Flares at level 5, it reduces the flare cooldown by 60%, bringing it down to 2 seconds. That said, it's still slightly longer than the missile cooldowns. So realistically, you can't hit perfect timing on every single missile with your flare. When missiles are coming in consecutively, you need to dodge the first one with a bit of margin to spare. If you dodge early enough, the flare cooldown syncs up better as more missiles come in. And you'll find yourself able to dodge 3.4, 5, even 6 in a row. The second point is that when you pop a flare, there's a window where the missile stays decoyed. Generally, the decoy effect lasts about 1.5 seconds. For example, the Su-25's IR missile has a 0.8 second cooldown. If you pop a flare and the enemy fires 2 missiles back-to-back, the second missile comes in 0.8 seconds after the first. Both could get decoyed by that single flare. It's important to have a solid grasp of these concepts first. Now let's revisit the fundamentals of missile evasion once more. The concept I want to cover this time is, which direction should you evade when a missile is incoming? Let me walk you through the basics of that. Actually, a lot of this content is already up on the KTG Cafe page. Our tactical instructor All Jeans has posted a ton of information, covering the core concepts of missile evasion and real combat application. So it's definitely worth checking that out as well. To give you a quick summary, let's say my jet is here, and an enemy jet is approaching from this direction. The enemy fires a missile straight at me. So as I pop a flare, I need to maneuver my jet away from the missile's trajectory. The key question is which direction to evade. When you look at the 3D plane, the spatial plane that the missile is traveling through, evading perpendicular to the missile's direction of travel is the most efficient move. This isn't just up, down, left, right in this cone-shaped 3D space. The perpendicular directions you can evade cover all 360 degrees. The key thing is this. With standard flares, since you can't evade consecutive missiles, the typical move is to dive downward. That's because you use the flare to dodge the first missile. But diving down means you're heading toward terrain to hide behind. When the enemy only fires one shot, the reason most pilots pop a flare and immediately dive is because they can't dodge a second missile with flares. So, they're trying to use terrain to hide. That's the thinking. But now let's consider what happens when you're dealing with consecutive missiles. So here's my jet, and as I mentioned, there's this 3D cone shape and a missile eyes incoming from this direction. If I evade the first missile perpendicular to its path, say I go downward. I dodge missile 1, then missile 2 comes in while I'm heading downward. So where is the perpendicular direction relative to missile 2? Same thing, exactly the same. It's still movement within that same plane. So as I'm heading down, if I then bank left, that's still perpendicular to the missile. Then going left to dodge missile 3, I pull up, then right again. What this means is that your direction of movement traces out a spiral path. Rotating around the cone, that's the concept of continuously evading perpendicular to each missile. The idea is that you're constantly evading in the perpendicular direction relative to each missile. Once you understand this concept, you'll know which direction to keep evading to most efficiently dodge consecutive missiles. This applies not just when missiles are incoming head-on, but also when missiles are chasing you from behind. Regardless, you look at the missile's direction and keep spiraling around the cone. That's how you maintain a perpendicular evasion for every missile. Now, within that spiral, the question is how wide your cone rotation should be, a big wide arc or a tighter one. Generally, the sharper you spiral, the better your evasion rate tends to be. Keep that concept in mind as we move into the practical examples. The first clip I'll show you is consecutive evasion against interceptor missiles. Our opponent is flying an aardvark. It's carrying 16 interceptor missiles. Our jet is a Tomcat equipped with fast flares, which allows us to evade missiles consecutively. As I mentioned, when missiles come in, the approach is to orbit around the enemy jet in a wide circle, tracing a cone-shaped path while popping flares to dodge them. The second key thing here is timing. Specifically, when do you fire your flare? It's hard to react by sound alone, so checking the minimap is really important. The minimap has 3 zoom levels, and I've zoomed out to the widest setting to see a 6-kilometer radius slightly wider than the default. Keep that in mind as you watch. I've set it up to see a wider area than the standard minimap. All right, climbing up when the warning light comes in, I immediately spread my wings and flares. Still circling around, right? Watch the minimap to see at what range the missiles are being fired. I'll run through the same clip again so you can recheck the timing and the angle of rotation. Now, you can see how wide your orbit should be. Takes some experience to develop. As I mentioned earlier, the tighter your spiral, the less perpendicular separation you get from the missile, and missiles have a turn radius too. If you orbit too tight, the flare might decoy the missile, but you still don't create enough angular separation to avoid being hit. Start with wide arcs, and once you're comfortable, you can gradually tighten the radius. I'm flying in a textbook demonstration-style pattern here, so use this as your reference. When a missile appears on the minimap, getting that first flare out at the right time is everything. If that timing is off, every missile that follows will hit you. Let me show you what that looks like. I'll show you specifically the case where timing fails. What does a late flare look like and how does it go wrong? Watch the distance on the minimap carefully. I popped the flare here. Because the first one was late, every missile after it hits. Now let me show you again with the correct timing so you can get a feel for the difference. Watch the timing. Did you see that? The takeaway, orbiting in a cone-shaped path, is how you continuously evade missiles in the perpendicular direction. Keep that in mind, and the second key point is knowing when exactly to pop your flares. Interceptor missiles are quite fast, so the faster the missile, the earlier you need to pop your flare. Medium-range missiles and IR missiles are slower, so you can wait until the missile is a bit closer before evading. Another important thing to note, if a missile comes in and you just fly straight perpendicular to escape, diving away from the engagement area means you're leaving the fight. If you completely give up your attack posture saying, "I'll focus entirely on dodging this missile," you lose altitude. It's hard to climb back up, and you lose your offensive position after evading. That's why circling in a cone pattern to evade missiles is actually advantageous for keeping control of the match. All right, let's move on to the next clip. This time I'll show you a passive missile evasion clip against the Su-27. The Su-27's passive missile is a 7.5 kilometer medium-range missile, slower than interceptor missiles. And since it can't be fired consecutively, it's a bit easier to dodge shot by shot. But because it's slower, I'm showing this clip specifically to compare the flare timing against the interceptor missile earlier. This is also a Tomcat equipped with fast flares. The missile is incoming, I spread my wings, and you can see I'm evading the missile at a closer range than before. The reason I'm pre-firing the flare is that when an IR missile is fired at very close range, waiting to see it coming before popping, the flare is already too late, so I'm firing it predictively. For IR missiles, that kind of evasion maneuver, except when escaping, is honestly less critical. Now check the timing. You can see the flare is used slightly later compared to the interceptor missile clip. The missile gets closer before I evade it. Continuing to show more examples, just get a feel for how to evade medium-range passive missiles. A bit slower. Right there, I was able to dodge that close-range missile precisely because IPRA fired the flare. The key point is that even in this situation, the missile is coming from a certain direction. Think of it as a pyramid shape, so you look at that direction and rotate along a perpendicular turn radius to evade. Now that you've seen the basics, let's check out some real match footage as a reference. The match we're looking at is a 1v1. The other 4 players are all bots. The opponent is running an Aardvark interceptor. They're at level 16, and I'm at level 20 with the improved targeting upgrade token equipped. That means missiles will be coming in on a faster cooldown than usual. I want to show that even against improved targeting, you can still evade with fast flares at level 5. Watch how missile evasion plays out in a real match. Especially in an interceptor versus interceptor scenario, without fast flares, when missiles come in, it's hard to climb to altitude, and when a missile hits, you're just hoping to hide into rain. That means the interceptor can't really fulfill its intended role. But if you can evade consecutive missiles with fast flares, you can basically say, go ahead and shoot, I'm not scared. Because you can keep evading missiles while maintaining your attack opportunities, You're free to push to high altitude without hesitation and use that altitude advantage for missile gameplay. Here they come, spread the wings and watch the timing. Those missiles are coming in fast. Oh, I got hit by the third one because the first timing was slightly off. And since the opponent has improved targeting equipped, you need to start dodging the first missile a bit earlier to sync up the rest of the evasion windows. But look, all 6 missiles dodged. That's what having fast flares on an interceptor means: no fear of missiles. Interceptors or jets with medium-range missiles can push to much higher altitude and perform their support and backup roles far more effectively. And here comes one from behind. Same deal. Since it was only one shot, their rotational evasion wasn't necessary here. Keep watching by orbiting in the direction the missiles are coming from. You maintain an offensive position even after evading. So this missile evasion technique is worth learning regardless of what jet you're flying, not just interceptors. And here comes another one from behind. Same here, I'm still trying to maintain the perpendicular angle relative to the missile's direction. When missiles come from multiple directions, treat them as one big missile and pick a rotation that sweeps away from that general direction. That can really help. And there it comes. I'm not firing my missiles first. I want to bait their missiles out and exhaust them first. That last missile might have missed even without a flare, given how fast the enemy missiles are. In this case, it seems like you can evade 4 interceptor missiles with improved targeting using just 3 shots of fast flares level 5. Predictive flare use. At this close of a range, if the enemy is about to fire, you need to pre-fire the flare to have any chance of evading it. One important bonus of the fast flare upgrade, it actually adds 1 extra flare to your loadout. The Tomcat normally carries 5 flares, but with fast flares equipped it becomes 6. Keep watching the rotational evasion in the perpendicular direction here. Ideally this time the timing was a bit off. I should have started the first flare rotation a bit earlier to survive. Keep an eye on flare timing, evasion direction, and how the rotation is executed. That's what to take away from this. Even in situations like this, since it takes time for the missile to reach you, you can wait to confirm the missile on your radar and then start your evasion maneuver. It's not too late. Once you reach this point, the enemy interceptor is neutralized. They've burned through all their missiles, and I've still got 2 flares left with my offensive position fully intact. Pretty significant. This is exactly why evading with fast flares while keeping your attack position shows such a massive difference in actual gameplay. This match is a good showcase of the advantages that fast flares bring. And here comes another missile from behind. So, just like this, fast flares let you evade consecutive missile fire, and even while evading, you can maintain an aggressive offensive position in the fight. That's really the main point of this tutorial video. Looking at the different playstyles, jets tend to fall into 2 categories: disruptive flares and fast flares. Disruptive flares is a skill that boosts survivability within gun engagement range. while fast flares significantly boost survivability against missile attacks. And this applies beyond interceptors in my view, heavy fighters loaded up with lots of missiles, for example. If they're too scared of missiles to gain altitude and just keep running away, they're wasting the huge missile loadout advantage that heavy fighters are supposed to have. Personally, I think heavy fighters should equip fast flares so they can hold high altitude, use their missiles for suppression and attack, and create the right environment to play aggressively. That's my take on it. All right. That's going to wrap up today's video. Thanks for sticking with a pretty long one. This has been Bomb YG from KTG. See you next.